Everyone dreams of visiting Australia, white sand beaches, the Great Barrier Reef, kangaroos hopping across red deserts, and Sydney's skyline shining over the harbour. But here's the catch. While Australia looks like a paradise, the price tag behind that dream trip might leave you stunned. People often imagine it's either a dirt-cheap backpacking adventure or a luxury playground for the rich. The truth? It's somewhere in between, but with costs and hidden fees that catch almost every traveler off guard. So what does it really cost to visit Australia? Today, we're pulling back the curtain and breaking down the numbers. Flights, hotels, food, transportation, activities, even the sneaky hidden costs no one warns you about. By the end of this video, you'll know whether that dream trip is realistic for your budget, or whether Australia will drain your wallet faster than you can say, "G'day, mate." But before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Where would you go first if you landed in Australia? Sydney, the Outback, or the Great Barrier Reef? Drop your pick in the comments. Let's start with the one thing you can't avoid: flights. Getting to Australia isn't cheap. Unless you already live in the Pacific, the flights are long, expensive, and often unpredictable. If you're flying from the US or Europe, you're usually looking at $1,000 to $1,800 for a round trip. From the west coast of the US, prices might dip closer to $900 if you book off-season. From New York or London, be ready to pay over $1,400, and that's before baggage fees. Here's the kicker. Australia's main airline, Qantas, has been accused multiple times of keeping fares high. In fact, in 2023, the government came under fire for rejecting extra routes from Qatar Airways, allegedly to protect Qantas from competition. Sure, you can hunt for deals. Some backpackers swear by booking during the shoulder season, or even taking budget airlines like Scoot through Singapore. But for most, the flight alone is the single biggest barrier to entry. And that's only the beginning, because once you finally land in Sydney or Melbourne, the real expenses start stacking up. Quick question, what's the most you've ever spent on a flight? Drop your number in the comments. I'm curious to see how many people have already broken the $1,000 mark. Touchdown in Sydney, and the first thing you'll realize is that accommodation here isn't cheap. If you're looking at a standard hotel, you're talking $150 to $300 per night in the major cities. That's not five-star luxury, that's a standard mid-range hotel. And if you're thinking Airbnb is the cheaper option, think again. In cities like Melbourne, Airbnbs often cost more than hotels. On top of that, locals are furious at Airbnb's impact on housing. So what are the options for budget travelers? Hostels. Australia's hostel game is massive, especially in coastal cities where backpackers flood in. You can find beds in shared dorms for $30 to $50 a night. Couchsurfing and farm stays are also popular for those who want to go ultra cheap. But here's the trade-off. Cheap beds often come with noisy roommates, questionable hygiene, and the occasional cockroach. Still, for many travelers, it's the only way to make the trip possible. But even if you score a cheap bed, there's no escaping the next expense: food. And in Australia, eating out is where wallets really start crying. If you were traveling, would you rather save money by staying in a hostel or splurge on a hotel for comfort? Drop your choice in the comments. Here's where most travelers get blindsided. Food in Australia is shockingly expensive. Forget about cheap $5 meals. Even fast food like McDonald's will run you $12 to $15. A casual sit-down dinner? Easily $25 to $40 per person. And that's before drinks. Groceries can save you money, but not as much as you'd hope. A week's worth of groceries for one person is about $70 to $100. That's why many backpackers stick to pasta, instant noodles, and the occasional sausage sizzle. And then there's the coffee culture. Australia takes coffee seriously, especially the infamous flat white. But at $4 to $6 per cup, grabbing one every morning adds up fast. Still, eating out is part of the experience. Sydney's seafood, Melbourne's brunch spots, and street food at night markets are all part of the culture. Just be prepared to spend. And yet, as expensive as food is, it's not the cost that shocks most visitors. Be honest, are you a cook-at-home traveler or do you love eating out on vacation? Let me know in the comments. Here's the thing, Australia is huge. It's basically the size of the US, and getting around isn't simple. Domestic flights are common, with prices ranging from $100 to $300 one way depending on distance. Flying from Sydney to Perth, for example, is like flying from New York to Los Angeles. Trains are an option, but they're slow and not much cheaper. The famous GONE train from Adelaide to Darwin costs over $1,000 for a multi-day journey. Renting a car is another choice, at $40 to $70 a day. But fuel in Australia? Among the most expensive in the world, often hitting $2 per litre. And don't even mention taxis. A short 15-minute ride in Sydney can cost $40. That's why Uber and other rideshare services have exploded, though that sparked a war with traditional taxi drivers. But the real money pit? Activities and experiences. Because in Australia, the fun stuff isn't free. If you were visiting Australia, would you go for a road trip, hop flights between cities, or stick to one place? Tell me your travel style in the comments. This is where travelers often get caught off guard. Seeing Australia's famous sights comes with a serious price tag. Want to snorkel the Great Barrier Reef? That'll cost $200 to $400 per person for a single-day trip. A tour of the Sydney Opera House is relatively cheap at $40. But if you want tickets to a show, expect to pay over $100. Then there's the Outback. Guided tours and safaris cost thousands. A 4-day Uluru trip can run $1,000 or more once you add transport, guides, and park fees. There's also a controversy here. Tourists have complained about hidden fees tacked onto tours. From mandatory reef tax charges to equipment rental fees, you often don't know the real cost until you've already booked. So yes, Australia has some of the world's most incredible experiences, but they don't come cheap. And yet, thousands of travelers have found ways to do it for a fraction of the cost. How? By diving into Australia's infamous backpacker culture. What would be your #1 dream activity in Australia? Reef diving, Sydney Opera House, or the Outback? Drop your choice below. Australia has one of the biggest backpacking scenes in the world. Every year, thousands of young travelers flood in with working holiday visas. Hostels are their home base, loud, crowded, and full of international travelers. At $30 to $50 a night, they're the cheapest option for accommodation. Many hostels even offer work-for-stay deals. You clean bathrooms or help at reception in exchange for free bed space. But there's a dark side. Reports of unsafe accommodations, scams, and shady farm work deals are common. Some backpackers end up working illegally under the table, paid far below minimum wage. Others get stuck in dangerous situations, lured by the promise of free rent. Still, for the adventurous, backpacking Australia is doable on $50 a day. It just means cutting corners on comfort and safety. But even if you live like a backpacker, there's one hidden cost you can't avoid, and it hits every traveler hard. Would you ever stay in a hostel with strangers to save money, or is that a no-go for you? Comment your answer. This is the part no one tells you about, the sneaky, unavoidable expenses that add up fast. Then there's travel insurance. In most countries, it's optional. In Australia, it's basically essential. Why? Because medical bills here are sky high if you're not a resident. A simple hospital visit could cost thousands, so insurance, while boring, is a must. Next, staying connected. Internet and SIM cards shock travelers. Expect $30 to $50 just for basic data packages. And don't even try relying on free Wi-Fi. And finally, Australia's strict biosecurity laws. If you don't declare food or plants when you arrive, you could face massive fines. Tourists have been slapped with $300 fines for forgetting an apple in their bag. What's the worst hidden travel fee you've ever been hit with? Share your story in the comments. If you're the type who loves to go out, brace yourself. Australia's nightlife is notoriously expensive. A beer at the pub, $8 to $12. A cocktail in Sydney, $18 to $25. A pack of cigarettes, nearly $40 thanks to Australia's infamous sin taxes. In fact, Australia is consistently ranked as one of the most expensive countries in the world for alcohol and tobacco. Concerts and festivals are also pricey, with tickets often starting at $100 and climbing fast. Even just a casual night out with friends can blow through $100 before you realize it. That's why locals, especially younger ones, often pre-drink at home before heading out, just to save cash. So yeah, nightlife in Australia is fun, but your wallet won't thank you for it. Now the big question, after adding up all these categories, what's the real cost of a trip to Australia? Let's break it down. If you were in Sydney right now, would you rather spend money on nightlife or save it for experiences? Comment below. So let's put it all together. If you're a backpacker living off instant noodles and hostels, you could get by on $50 to $70 a day. That's about $350 to $500 a week. Still not cheap, but doable for long-term travelers. For the average mid-range traveler, expect $150 to $250 a day. That's hotels, meals out, some tours, and a bit of comfort. For a 2-week trip, you're looking at $2,500 to $4,000 total. And for luxury travelers, sky's the limit. At $500 plus a day, you could easily spend $7,000 to $10,000 on a 2-week vacation. Here's the twist, though. While Australia feels expensive, it can actually be cheaper than parts of Europe or Japan if you plan smart. Cook some of your own meals, travel off-season, and skip overpriced tours in favor of free experiences like hiking national parks. So would you still travel to Australia after knowing the real costs? Drop your travel style in the comments. Backpacker, mid-range, or luxury. And if you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more travel breakdowns, and share this video with someone who's been dreaming about Australia, because knowing the real costs could make or break their trip.